you, thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to see such a crowd with young people, older people, old people like me. And it's unfortunately that we still have to talk about those terrible events, because it's now 80 years ago that all this happened, and people start to forget. Recently I was in America, and I came across a newspaper, and it said, you know, people come and visit Amsterdam to go to the Anne Frank house. That was a house where the family were hiding for 2 years till they were betrayed, because it's one of the big attractions in Amsterdam to visit the Anne Frank house. But many people don't even know why it's important, why they have to visit it. And those are going to now change the whole atmosphere there. They're going to tell much more about the Holocaust, much more about how it all happened, because that seems to have got lost. I mean, people come, not in Europe, people do know, but people come from all over the world now, and in those faraway countries, the Holocaust is not really known, but the name Anne Frank is known all over the world. And I must admit, this is why I become one of the most well-known Holocaust survivor speakers, through my connection with Anne Frank. For years I was always introduced, not at my own name, but the stepsister of Anne Frank, because she, as I said, is known all over the world. So as well recently when I made a big tour in America, speaking in the South, and though people are worried, everywhere where I come people are worried. There are anti-Semitic incidents, there are Muslim incidents, and people don't know anymore what to do. And I was before that for Holocaust Memorial Day, I was in Germany as well. You had this terrible incident in Berlin. We had something happening here in Westminster just a week ago. And people are really afraid. And so we really have to learn from history. So of course the Holocaust is something quite unique, it's quite different from everything else, but nevertheless the suffering and the killing and the prejudice is actually very similar. So to go to my own story, I come from a beautiful country, Austria. We were a big extended family. We were Jewish, not Orthodox, but in Austria, in school, and in Germany as well, at that time, I'm not sure what it is now, you had to have religious education. And so the Jewish children were taken out of the class, and we had Jewish education in a different classroom, and afterwards we went back, and that was it. And that was in the 30s, and nobody minded. I had many, many Catholic friends, my parents too, mixed with Catholic people. At that time, those were the big groups, really. Catholic people, the majority, and Jewish people. At that time, I don't think there were any Muslims, not very few Protestants either, but those were the two religions. And, you know, it was a very, very happy life with mountains. We went, we made excursions, we went to, in the summer we went to Italy for swimming, and my father had a shoe factory. We were relatively well off. My father was one of the people who had one of the first cars. He was a daredevil. He took us up mountain roads, and I really loved that. I was very sporty. I enjoyed going with him, doing daring things. My mother and my brother were much more cautious. But, you know, life was good, but it changed from one day to the next. In March 1938, I was just 9 years old. We heard in the morning marches, music and shouting, and we looked out of the window and we were amazed. The streets were covered with people waving the big red swastika flags, standing with their arms, Heil Hitler salute, shouting, and the German army marched in. We were in shock because it was not planned. There was supposed to be a referendum, what Austria wants, but Hitler didn't wait for it and just marched in. And the population suddenly embraced him. Hitler was, of course, Austrian himself, and perhaps that might have helped that he became so popular in Austria. Jewish people started to be attacked really from the next day onwards, and that was the very first time that I experienced anti-Semitism. After school, I usually went to my best friend, who was a Catholic girl. On my way home, it was 10 minutes walk. And the next day, after the Nazis had marched in, the mother saw me, and I could see she was very cross. And when I came there, she said, "I never want to see you here again," and she slammed the door in my face. I went home crying. I said to my mother, "I don't understand. We didn't have a quarrel. What has happened?" My mother said, "Well, this is how life for Jewish people will be now. Very, very different." My brother, who was 12 years old, he came home. His face was all bashed up. His nose was bleeding. He looked terrible. And when my parents questioned him, "What has happened?" he said, "My own friends did that, and the teachers just watched it happening." So you can imagine that our parents decided we must leave as quickly as possible. But that was a big, big problem, and that is something which we see what is happening now. By 1938, it was already very, very difficult to get an exit visa and an entry visa. You had to have papers for everything. And in the early days in Germany, like the Frank family left Frankfurt in 1933, when Otto Frank saw the Nazis marching in the street, he said, "This is not a country where I want to bring up my family," and he was able to get out. That was 1933. But by 1938, most countries had closed their doors. That is something which we know now. They haven't built walls or gates between the countries, what is happening now, but you had to have a visa. And this was practically impossible to get. My father, he had business contact in Holland. He was able to get out 2 days after the Nazis came in, and we couldn't. And by the time we wanted to get out, it was practically impossible.